My father gave the family business to my lazy cousin. I built my own and bought his debt. The scent of fresh baked bread and frying dough was the smell of my childhood, my heritage, and my greatest heartache. Mazara's Bakery wasn't just a business on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, it was a neighborhood institution, a living thing with a heartbeat of yeast and a soul of semolina flour. It was my great-grandfather's hands kneading dough in a coal-fired oven, my grandfather's laugh as he handed biscotti to wide-eyed children, my father's quiet pride as he balanced the books, ensuring the legacy endured. I, Sophia Mazara, grew up in the flour-dusted backrooms, learning the difference between a 00 and a TIPA 1 flour by touch, understanding the temperament of a sourdough starter before I understood algebra. The bakery was in my blood, as vital and as taken for granted as my own heartbeat. The problem was my blood, specifically, its gender. And the problem was my cousin, Marco. Marco was the eldest son of my father's elder brother, who had died young. In my father's old world, Calabrian mindset, this made Marco the primogenito, the heir apparent. Never mind that Marco had the work ethic of a hibernating bear and the business acumen of a concussed goldfish. He drifted through his youth on charm and the Mazara name, working the counter when he felt like it, always with an eye on the clock, his hands perpetually clean. He saw the bakery as an annuity, not an organism. I saw it as my life's work. By 16, I was managing weekend inventory. By 19, I'd redesigned the morning pastry production, cutting waste by 30%. I took night classes in business management at Fordham. I developed a new line of rosemary and sea salt focaccia that became a neighborhood legend. The customers, the old Sicilian grandmothers and the new foodie millennials alike, asked for me. Davi Sophia? Is Sophia here today? My father, Antonio, would beam with pride, then inevitably Ed, La mia Sophia, hi el imani d'oro. My Sophia, you have golden hands. But the pride had a ceiling. It was the pride for a prized racehorse, not a jockey. The reins, he believed, belonged to a man. The confrontation came the summer I turned 25. Marco had just been fired from his third marketing job in the city. He slunk back to Arthur Avenue, tail between his legs. My father called a family meeting in the bakery's upstairs office, the air thick with the ghosts of 1,000 espresso shots. Children, he began, his hands, thick and scarred from a lifetime of oven burns, resting on the old oak desk. The time has come for me to step back. The arthritis. He flexed his fingers, a gesture of surrender. The bakery needs young blood at the helm. My heart soared, then plummeted in the space of a breath. Marco, my father said, turning to my cousin, who was trying to look solemn but couldn't hide the flicker of triumphant relief. You are the eldest. The name passes to you. You will be the boss. Capo. Marco gave a solemn nod. I won't let you down, Zia. My father then turned to me. His eyes, usually so warm, were pleading, asking for my compliance. Sophia, Kiori mia. Your hands, your mind, they are the soul of this place. You will be the general manager. You will run the day-to-day. You will be Marco's right hand. Together, you will honor your nano. It was a beautifully wrapped insult. All the responsibility, none of the authority. All the work, none of the legacy. I was to be the engine, while Marco sat in the driver's seat, map in hand, destined to get us lost. And if I don't want to be his right hand? I asked, my voice trembling with a fury I'd spent a lifetime suppressing. My father's face hardened. Then you choose to leave the family. This is how it is done. Trade Izione. The bloodline, the name, it must continue through the man. You will marry, you will have your own family. The bakery is for the Mazara men. The bakery is kept alive by Mazara hands, I shot back, tears of rage now blurring my vision. My hands. And you're giving it to a man who thinks proofing is something you do in a court of law. Marco had the audacity to look wounded. Hey, I can learn. You haven't learned in 28 years, Marco. You won't learn now. My father slammed his palm on the desk. Basta. Enough. This is my decision. It is final. You have a place here, Sophia. A good place. Be content. Be content. The two most withering words ever spoken to an ambitious heart. I looked from my father's immutable, tradition-carved face to Marco's smug, vacant one. The bakery, the warm, yeasty heart of my world, suddenly felt like a gilded cage. I stood up. The chair screeched against the old floorboards. I am not content, I said, each word a chip of ice. And I will not be your ghost in this machine. You want to give my birthright to him. Fine. But I won't stay to watch him kill it. I walked out. I didn't take my apron. I didn't take the starter I'd nurtured for a decade. I took only my fury and my knowledge. That night, in my tiny apartment, I cried for hours. Then, I dried my eyes, opened a fresh notebook, and began to sketch. Not bread. A business plan. I called it ilqri, the heart. A deliberate, pointed choice. If Mazarez was about the family name, my bakery would be about the essential core, the love and craft itself. I had no family money. My father, hurt and stubborn, had cut me off financially, believing I'd come crawling back. So, I used everything I had, my life savings, a crushing small business administration loan, and a second mortgage on my apartment that gave me nightmares. The location was key. Not on Arthur Avenue, in the shadow of the Colossus. I found a narrow, deep storefront on a less traveled but up-and-coming stretch of Morris Park. It needed everything. I became a general contractor, a plumber, an electrician's apprentice. I sanded floors until my arms shook, stained wood until my clothes were ruined, and scrubbed the century of grime from brick walls that I insisted on leaving exposed. The oven was my one splurge, a magnificent, Italian-made steam-injected deck oven that cost more than my car. It was my temple, my weapon. I hired not based on family, but on passion. I found Luis, a Honduran baker with magic in his fingers for laminated pastries. I hired Anya, a Russian grandmother whose rye bread was a thing of dark, complex beauty. We were a band of exiles, united by craft. ilqri opened on a bitter cold March morning. No fanfare. Just the open sign flipped, the lights turned on, and the scent of my first batch of sourdough fed from a new starter I'd captured from the very air of my new kitchen wafting onto the street. It was a scent of defiance. We didn't try to compete with Mazarez on their terms. We didn't do cannoli or sfogliatelle. We did what I'd always dreamed of, a modern, ingredient-led tribute to Italian baking. Sourdough loaves with roasted garlic and Calabrian chili. Bomboloni filled with blood orange curd. A savory schiacciata with Robiola cheese and truffle honey. We were painstaking, slow, and expensive. And the neighborhood, hungry for something authentic yet new, responded. Food writers came. Lines formed on Saturday mornings. Meanwhile, on Arthur Avenue, the folly unfolded as predictably as a bad play. Marco's first act as capo was to give himself a massive salary increase. His second was to hire two of his lazy friends as assistant managers. His third was to cut costs. He switched to cheaper, commoditized flour. He ordered pre-made, frozen pastry bases. He fired two of the ancient, beloved baker's men who'd taught me everything to save on payroll, replacing them with uninterested part-timers. The soul of Mazarez began to leak out. The crust of the bread lost its crackle. The cannoli cream tasted of preservatives, not ricotta. The old customers complained. My father, now officially retired but haunting the place like a regretful ghost, would argue with Marco, who dismissed him as a relic. The market has changed, Zia. We need to scale. Modernize. He modernized by launching a disastrous, cheap-looking website and a delivery app that hemorrhaged money. He took out a line of credit to refurbish the dining area in garish, modern Chrome, alienating the old-timers. The debt mounted. The quality crumbled. The line at Mazar's shrank, while the line at Ilqre grew. I watched it all from a distance, a chronic ache in my own heart. I'd drive down Arthur Avenue sometimes, see the faded awning, the empty tables, and feel a grief so profound it stole my breath. It wasn't just a business failing, it was my history, my grandfather's laugh, being erased by incompetence. The turning point came 3 years after I'd left. My mother, the eternal peacemaker, called me, her voice thick with tears. Sophia, you have to talk to your father. The bank, they are calling the loans. Marco, he didn't make the payments. He used the money for, God knows, a bad investment. There's a second mortgage. They're going to take the bakery. Your father will lose everything. I felt a surge of pity, immediately followed by a cold, clear clarity. This was no longer about hurt feelings or tradition. This was a financial catastrophe. What does he want me to do, Mama? Write a check. I have a business to run, one that's actually succeeding. He just needs advice. He doesn't know who else to turn to. Marco has disappeared. He's in Atlantic City, they think. I agreed to meet him, not at the bakery, but at a neutral diner. He looked 10 years older, his broad shoulders slumped, the oven-burn scars on his hands standing out like pale brands against his weathered skin. Sophia, he began, his voice a gravelly whisper. I was wrong. I waited. The words hung there, enormous and insufficient. About Marco. About everything. The bakery, it's dying. They will take it. The building, the ovens, my father's name on the window. A tear traced a path through the stubble on his cheek. It undid me, and it hardened me, all at once. What are the numbers? I asked, my voice all business. He slid a manila folder across the Formica table. It was a morass of debt, the original line of credit, the second mortgage, unpaid supplier invoices, back taxes. A total of nearly $1.2 million. For a failing business whose only real asset was its real estate. Who holds the debt? I asked. A small commercial bank. A hard money lender. For the second mortgage. His shame was palpable. Hard money lenders were the bottom feeders of finance. I closed the folder. An idea, audacious and ruthless, began to crystallize. I wouldn't give him my hard-earned Ilqre profits to bail out Marco's mess. But I could use those profits as a weapon. Don't do anything, I said. Don't talk to anyone. Let the process play out. He looked at me, confused, hopeless. So, we let it die. No, I said, standing up, leaving cash for the coffee. You already did that. I'm going to see what can be salvaged from the ruins. What followed was a cold, clinical financial campaign. Through my lawyer and a discreet broker, I made inquiries with the bank. They were desperate to get the non-performing loan off their books. The hard money lender was even more eager. They were vultures used to picking over carcasses. I formed an LLC with a bland, anonymous name, Apex Holdings. Over the course of 6 months, Ilqre's robust profits funded the purchase of Mazar's Bakery's debt. I bought the loans for 40 cents on the dollar. I now own the strings that were strangling my family's legacy. The foreclosure notice was the final act. As the primary debt holder, Apex Holdings filed for formal foreclosure on the property and business assets. The legal notice was posted on the bakery's iconic glass door. The scene there that final day was a silent, familial apocalypse. I arrived with my lawyer as the marshals were overseeing the lock change. My father was there, a shell of a man. And Marco, who had slunk back from his gambling hiatus, was there too, red-eyed and belligerent. "This is a disgrace," Marco shouted at the marshal. "This is my family's place." "Not anymore, sir," the marshal said blandly. That's when Marco saw me. His face contorted. "You. Did you do this? You jealous bitch. You couldn't stand that it was mine, so you destroyed it." I walked up to him, my heels clicking on the familiar sidewalk. "I didn't destroy it, Marco. You did. With every cheap ingredient, every lazy decision, every stolen dollar. I just bought the receipt for the damage." I turned to the marshal and my lawyer. "The property and all business assets are now under the control of Apex Holdings. Effective immediately, I am terminating the employment of Marco Mazzara for gross mismanagement and negligence. Security will escort him from the premises." Marco sputtered, but two hired security guards stepped forward. As they led him away, he screamed curses in Italian and English, a final, pathetic performance. I then turned to my father. He was staring at the ground, unable to look at me or the changed lock. "Antonio," I said, using his name, not Papa. "The business is gone. Mazzara's bakery, as you knew it, is finished." He nodded, a single, defeated movement. "But the building remains. The ovens remain. And I have a proposition for you." I took a deep breath. "I am reopening this location as the flagship store for Il Cuore. I need someone who knows this building, who understands its history and its physical quirks, who can manage the veteran bakers, the ones we will rehire with respect. I need a consultant. A production consultant. The pay is fair. The title is clear. You would report to me." He finally looked up, his eyes a storm of humiliation, awe, and dawning, agonizing respect. He was being offered a job by the daughter he'd sidelined, in the kingdom he'd lost, on terms she dictated. It was the ultimate reversal. You would trust me to work for you," he rasped. "I trust your hands," I said, echoing his old words with new meaning. "I trust your knowledge. I do not trust your judgment on succession. That is no longer your concern. This is my bakery now. Do you want the job?" He was silent for a long minute, his gaze traveling over the brick facade, the faded lettering, as if seeing it for the first time. He was not being offered his legacy back. He was being offered a chance to be part of a new one, built by better hands. Slowly, with the gravity of a man signing a peace treaty, he nodded. "Yes, capo. I would be honored." The word capo from his lips, directed at me, was the final brick laid in my new foundation. The transformation of the Arthur Avenue location took 6 months. We stripped Marco's chrome monstrosity away, restoring the original tin ceiling and worn tile floors. We kept the name Mazzara's on the window, but beneath it, in smaller, elegant script, it now read, "An Il Cuore Heritage Bakery." We fired up the old coal-fired oven for special weekend loaves, a direct link to the past. We brought back the classic recipes, but executed them with Il Cuore's fanatical ingredients standards. And we introduced my new creations alongside them. Opening day was a neighborhood event. The old customers returned, tentatively at first, then with tears of recognition. "The bread, it tastes like your nonno's." The line stretched down the block, a fusion of old and new. My father, in a simple baker's coat with a new, humble dignity, showed Louise how the old oven breathed. He taught Anya the secret of my grandfather's fig filling. He worked harder and with more purpose than I'd ever seen, free from the burden of a crown he was never meant to wear alone. One evening, after closing, we stood together in the quiet, flour-dusted silence of the bakery, the scent of the day's final bake still hanging in the air. He looked at the portrait of my great-grandfather that now hung beside a photo of the ILQRE team. "He would be proud of you, Sophia," my father said, his voice thick. "Not just of the success, but of the justice of it. You didn't just build a better bakery. You balanced the scales." I looked around at the heart I had reclaimed, not through birthright, but through battle. "I didn't do it for justice, Papa," I said softly. "I did it for the bread. The bread demanded to be good. And I was the only one left who was willing to listen." He placed a flowery hand on my shoulder, a gesture of partnership, of fealty, of love finally stripped of its archaic conditions. The family business hadn't been passed down. It had been earned, lost, and then bought back at a bankruptcy auction. And in that ruthless, unromantic transaction, a new tradition was born, one where the golden hands, not just the family name, finally held the keys.